You ever notice when someone wants to feel self-righteous about their own film taste and make vague criticisms on how things just aren't the same these days? That they'll talk about how it's sad films like this can't be made anymore. Look under the comments of clips from any old comedy film, Blazing Saddles, Airplane, Borat, The Dictator for some reason. They all have the same facile comments whining about how, these films aren't made these days. PC culture has gone too far. Perhaps the most common film used as an example of one that just couldn't be made today is Blazing Saddles. So the first thing we're gonna have to do is figure out what offensive things happen in Blazing Saddles. The plot is that a corrupt politician makes a black person sheriff in order to ruin a town. Now, there's obviously some satirical racism there. There's a guy who says, "I like rape."
Qualifications.
Rape, murder, arson, and rape.
You said rape twice.
I like rape.
The characters disguise themselves as KKK members at one point. Slurs are used frequently, and that's really it. I gotta be honest, it's surprisingly tame for a movie that's used as a frequent example of classic politically incorrect humor. Now that I've introduced you to the film, let's go over some of the comments you'd see under any random clip of the movie posted to YouTube. One of the cleverest movies ever! The way they made fun of racism using humor instead of being preachy has never been duplicated in any other movie since. Mel Brooks is a genius. Yeah, if you didn't hear, Mel Brooks actually got a patent on that. There is no other movie that ever uses humor and satire to criticize racism. Not a single movie since 1974. Yes, sirree, not a single one. Please ignore the examples being shown on screen. They will never make another movie like this, ever. Boomer ellipsis. Richard Pryor was one of the producers. You're welcome. Not sure what those last two lines were about, but again, I don't get the argument of, oh, these movies will never be made again. Because first of all, I never got what is so unique about Blazing Saddles to so many old people, even in its time where there are plenty of movies similar to that, and after the fact, there's hundreds of politically incorrect films that you can watch. Ones that are being released today, in this year. I have to imagine that they're just trying to talk this movie up so hard so that they can totally own the social justice movement of today. These fucking idiots trying to take away our movies just for wanting civil rights because they've inbred this weird narrative that the social justice movement, or as they call it, cancel culture, is trying to ruin comedy. This is a review left on IMDb. It's also a fresh reminder that at one time you could tell politically incorrect jokes and not have to apologize for it. I mean, can you imagine a movie like this coming out today? With this type of humor being pretty much outlawed today, the film has an even bigger importance. It is fucking pathetic, because I can point to many other examples of movies that came out after it, some of them even relatively recently, that people are also saying can't be made today. To my surprise, people were arguing that Sacha Baron Cohen's The Dictator couldn't be made today because it's too politically incorrect. Try this type of jokes in 2020, everyone starts crying, and rumors of war start up. What the fuck are you talking about? This movie came out in the year of our Lord, 2012. Is the social climate really so dramatically different that those movies are just simply unacceptable now? Does 8 years really make that massive of a difference? And you'll see this under many other movies. Airplane. Here's some comments under Airplane. They seem to think cinema is just a political minefield and that only certain types of films are made, when that is not the case at all. If anyone listening right now can, please tell me one movie that has been canceled like these morons claim it has. Because I can't think of a single one, because movies don't get canceled. People are going to get offended, yes, I'm not going to deny that, but the movies can still be made, and if you don't believe me, Sacha Baron Cohen made Borat 2, a sequel to a movie a lot of people were holding up as an example of a movie that couldn't be made today. The movie contains racism used for comedic effect. At one point, Borat disguises himself as a KKK member to blend in at a conservative rally. Jokes about human trafficking, pedophilia, incest, rape,
murder, genocide, and extended scenes with QAnon-entrenched Trump supporters. In 2020, it was nominated for Best Screenplay for some reason. The half-improv movie, I don't get it either, but my point is that cancel culture didn't stop that movie from coming out because there is no cancel culture. Just old people petulantly maladaptive to the world around them. Let's talk about a recent case with a comedian that just wanted to cry cancel culture. Dave Chappelle has been whining about J.K. Rowling getting heat for saying that gender is a fact in a way to exclude trans women from feminist movements. They are a TERF. What a TERF is essentially using the mask of I am a real feminist to be transphobic and discredit trans women as being real women. First of all, if you don't consider trans women women, that still isn't really an excuse to degrade them and exclude them from social justice movements. Because feminism means that you want everyone of all genders to be socially equal by disproportionately disparaging someone, even if you don't consider them part of your own gender. That isn't equality. Secondly, she clearly does not understand the difference between gender and sex, because gender is in reference to one's social experience, which is why it isn't binary and can change, whereas someone's sex is in reference to their biological traits, male and female. I should mention there's also intersex people, meaning that they could have male genitals but also be born with like an ovary or something, but they're the exception, not the rule. I'm going to assume that they meant sex is a fact, and by proxy they mean that feminism means you want members of the female sex equated to those of the male sex. So they exclude trans women because they think they're trying to intrude on female equality. A TERF will fight against someone's plight as a trans woman and try to invalidate it because they don't see them as a woman. But being conditional about who has a plight and who doesn't is not feminism, even if you don't consider them women, which they are, by the way. That doesn't really track, though, because you want everyone to be equal. Now, understandably, trans women and supporters of trans rights were quite upset about this. Trans people are the largest demographic to suffer violence on the basis of sexual orientation. Sexual orientation is the largest bias motivation for violence besides race and ethnicity. In the United States, there is a legal strategy called the trans panic defense, where if someone kills a trans person, they can argue that they were so surprised or offended to learn that they were trans that it incited a sense of temporary insanity where their actions weren't of their own volition. This defense is still legal in 35 states, with only 11 more states considering banning the defense. If cis women want to play games with who is more oppressed, try to point me to any time in history where an equivalent for this existed for cis women. I don't normally get this passionate, but if you want to quantify the amount of oppression your demographic is suffering in an effort to justify hatred towards them, then be prepared to lose. Play stupid games and you can't even win stupid prizes. If you want to use feminism as a veil to exclude people from your movement and invalidate the struggles of those you're excluding by insinuating they're irrelevant because they weren't born like you, genuinely, go fuck yourself. You have no stance on anything. Now, where was I going with all this? Now, Dave Chappelle massively understates the boldness of the TERF stance, acting as if it's almost irrelevant to J.K. Rowling's character.
And they canceled her because she said in an interview, and this is not exactly what she said, but effectually, she said gender was a fact. And then the trans community got mad as shit. They started calling her a TERF. I didn't even know what the fuck that was. But I know that trans people make up words to win arguments.
Yeah, I guess you could argue that, or maybe the word was made up because it's more convenient to just say TERF than to constantly explain the entire concept of a trans exclusionary radical feminist every time it's mentioned. It's just easier. That's how language works, Chappelle.
TERF is an acronym. Stands for Trans Exclusionary Radical Feminists. This is a real thing. This is a group of women that hate transgender. They don't hate transgender women.
No, back in the 50s, they didn't hate black people during segregation times. White people just didn't want them in their spaces.
But they look at trans women the way we blacks might look at blackface. It offends them. Like, ooh, this bitch is doing an impression of me.
That explanation is so deceptively incorrect. so as to lighten the impact of when he's going to reveal that he is Team TERF and that he is in support of everything I just mentioned in the past 3 minutes. So he's purposefully misdefining it for an audience that might not be familiar with the term. So now you'll know what the correct definition is.
I am a feminist. That's right. I'm Team TERF.
He then claims that she, and Harry Potter as a whole, was canceled for this. Really? The woman getting another movie next year? The woman whose net worth is an estimated £820 million? She's canceled. Really? He even acknowledges this in his new special. I don't understand how we can have this stance that she's been canceled when she's in the top 200 richest people in her country. She has millions of Twitter followers and people that still interact with her. She still makes it onto interviews. She's getting another movie this year. And then have the gall to say that you've been canceled when your comedy routine currently has an 8.1 out of 10 on IMDb, was in the top 10 on Netflix when it premiered, and only helped boost your name when it got a trans employee fired from Netflix because they spoke negatively about it. Not to mention how the CEO of Netflix has been fighting tooth and nail in your favor, Dave. You're not canceled. J.K. Rowling isn't canceled because the words cancel culture is just some magic words idiots like you try to use to add legitimacy to your arbitrary distaste to the world around them. How unsatisfied with society you are. And I've got news for you. Society is never going to be how you want it to be. That goes for everyone listening. It's called reality. It's called compromise. Your movies are not disappearing, and the people that made them are not being canceled. They're being criticized. And if you're against criticism, then you're against media standards as a whole. And I apologize for going quite far off track, but I'm trying to emphasize how idiotic claims of cancel culture going mad are. Please, give me one celebrity that's been canceled for a completely unjustifiable reason, where they're unable to find work, unable to continue their career. Please, I beg you, because I will delete this video if you find one celebrity that's been canceled for legitimately no reason and cannot find a job anywhere. Find one. Just one. God. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.